$492 million.
Right. And 20 massive buildings.
1,600 individual apartments.
With something like 3,000 residents living in them.
And all of that, I mean, an entire neighborhood's worth of aging infrastructure, commercial splices, and, well, human lives, all handled by one single joint venture.
Yeah, over the span of just a few years. It's wild.
It is. Okay, so let's unpack this. Because what we are looking at today isn't, just a standard construction job.
Not at all.
This is essentially flipping a small city while the residents are still living inside it. We're looking at the exact scope of the recently completed Williamsburg Houses renovation over in Brooklyn.
Yep, the Williamsburg Houses.
And today, we're going to break open a really fascinating market intelligence report provided by Smart Business Automator. We're using their data to map out the blueprint of the absolute biggest NYCHA deals.
That's the New York City Housing Authority, for anyone unfamiliar.
Right, the biggest NYCHA deals happening right now. So if you are listening to this as a contractor, a sub, or a developer, the goal of this deep dive is to show you exactly how this massive public-private playbook actually works.
And how it's being rapidly replicated across the entire city as we speak. Because what's fascinating here isn't just the physical construction, but the sheer scale of the creative financing required to pull something like this off.
Yeah, the money side is staggering.
Exactly. The joint venture behind the Williamsburg project, which is RDC Development.
And that's a partnership, right?
Yeah, it's a partnership between MDG Design Construction and Wavecrest Management. They didn't just, walk in with a government check and start knocking down walls.
Right.
Because the Williamsburg houses have landmark status, they were able to leverage $142 million in state and federal historic tax credits.
Let's just pause on that for a second. $142 million just in tax credits.
Yeah.
That is a completely different stratosphere of funding from what we usually see in public works.
Oh, absolutely.
But to really understand how a near $500 million deal is even possible in the, historically underfunded realm of public housing, we have to look at the underlying mechanism driving it.
Right, the engine behind the whole thing.
Exactly. We have to talk about the PACT program.
Yeah, so PACT stands for Permanent Affordability Commitment Together.
Okay.
And it is the financial engine underneath this entire urban transformation. Because for decades, traditional public housing has been legally restricted in ways that prevent it from accessing private capital.
Because it's purely government owned.
Right. It relies entirely on federal funding allocations, which, as anyone in the industry knows, have fallen tens of billions of dollars short of what is actually needed for major capital repairs.
Yeah, you see it all the time. The buildings deteriorate. The roofs leak.
Elevators fail.
Right, elevators fail, but the housing authority's hands are tied because pure public housing cannot just walk into a commercial bank and secure a massive private loan to fix it. So how does the PACT model actually solve that bottleneck? I know from the report, the key to this is something called project-based Section 8, but what does that actually mean on a structural level?
Well, the mechanism is actually brilliant in its bureaucratic simplicity.
Okay.
So unlike standard Section 8, where a housing voucher follows the individual tenant wherever they decide to move.
Right, the voucher goes with the person.
Exactly. Project-based Section 8 ties the federal rental subsidy directly to the physical building itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So by officially converting these public housing units over to project-based Section 8, NYCHA suddenly creates a guaranteed multi-decade revenue stream for that specific property.
I see. So once that revenue stream is locked to the concrete, basically, a bank can look at it and say, okay, we can underwrite a massive loan against this.
Exactly. That single shift unlocks the private capital and debt markets. It brings developer partners into the equation to provide the massive upfront investment needed to execute these physical renovations.
Renovations that have been deferred for, 30 years in some cases?
30 years, easily. And looking impartially at the structure of the program, the resident impact is highly protected.
Which is always the big concern, right?
Right.
Displacement.
Right. But under PACT, residents keep their apartments, they retain all their previous tenant rights, and their rent remains legally capped at affordable levels.
So it's a back-end financial play.
Exactly. It's a massive financial restructuring on the back end that fundamentally preserves the community on the front end.
And the sheer volume of capital flowing through this restructuring is it's staggering. According to the intelligence report we have here, over $7 billion in PACT financing has already closed.
$7 billion.
Yeah, covering over 25,000 individual apartments. And their target. They are aiming to convert 62,000 apartments total.
Which is huge.
That is 1/3 of all NYCHA units in the city. But, okay, let me push back on the reality of the work for a second.
Sure.
Because if private money is coming in to fix public housing, what does that mean for the contractor actually swinging the hammer? Are they still drowning in the notorious red tape of a standard government job?
And that is the crucial paradigm shift for the construction industry here. The PACT model is essentially the government acknowledging that it cannot afford to fix this portfolio itself, so, they're letting private capital take the wheel.
Right.
For contractors, that means these deals are structured, managed, and executed much more like private real estate development than traditional red tape-heavy government procurement.
The pace changes.
The speed and the expectations completely change.
Which means a contractor has to scale up their operations almost overnight to meet a private developer's timeline. I mean, you can't just take on a piece of a $492 million project with the same 3 excavators you use for local commercial work.
You really can't. And that's where understanding the financial tools becomes just as important as understanding the blueprints. Because this operates like a private development, contractors can utilize specialized capital, like SBA 504 loans.
Oh, right, the 504.
Yeah, a 504 loan is specifically structured to finance major fixed assets. So if you suddenly need to acquire heavy machinery, specialized lifts, or even real estate to handle the logistics of a massive multi-year PACT renovation.
Because you're basically setting up a permanent camp.
Exactly. The 504 loan allows you to finance that equipment with a much lower down payment, which keeps your operating cash intact.
That makes sense. So if the legal red tape is finally out of the way and the equipment financing is secured, the next major bottleneck isn't bureaucracy. It is sheer physical logistics.
Oh, logistics will make or break you on these.
Right. So how did the RDC Development joint venture actually coordinate the physical reality of the Williamsburg overhaul without the site descending into total chaos? I mean, they just wrapped this up in October of 2024.
Well, to understand the execution, you really have to look at the institutional muscle of the players involved.
Yeah.
MDG Design Construction, they've already rehabilitated over 10,000 apartments across New York City.
Wow. Okay.
And their partner in the joint venture, Wavecrest Management, they oversee more than 26,000 affordable housing units.
So they are not figuring this out as they go.
Right. They understand volume, but even for them, the scope at Williamsburg was monumental.
Yeah, because it wasn't just, fresh paint and new floors.
Not at all.
Looking at the report, the scope included completely gut renovating the apartments, overhauling the core building infrastructure, meaning the plumbing, the electrical, the heating.
The grounds, too.
Right. Redesigning the external grounds, building a brand new community center, creating 2 childcare facilities, and renovating 19 commercial storefronts.
Across 20 different buildings.
Well, it's unbelievable.
And when you look at the logistics of managing 1,600 simultaneous apartment renovations, traditional administration methods just completely collapse.
I think people really underestimate that part of it. Think of it like air traffic control at JFK during a blizzard.
That's a great analogy.
You've got plumbing rough-ins happening in Building 4, electrical work in Building 12, and lead abatement in Building 7. If the plumbers get delayed in Building 4, you can't just stack the drywallers in a holding pattern in the hallway.
No, you can't.
The entire schedule has to dynamically reroute to prevent a multi-million-dollar pileup.
Which is exactly why you cannot run a project of this size with manual spreadsheets, endless email threads, and overflowing filing cabinets. And this actually brings us back to why we are looking at data from Smart Business Automator.
Right, the tech side of this.
At this tier of construction, artificial intelligence and automated workflows are no longer just a luxury. They are a mandatory survival mechanism.
I was actually looking at how their platform handles the specific scale of logistics, and it answers a lot of questions about how these joint ventures don't just drown in paperwork.
Oh, the paperwork alone could sink the job.
Exactly. Take their smart document organization. On a landmark site like Williamsburg, you are dealing with thousands of photos, historic plans, permits, and submittals.
Mountains of it.
Right. And the AI automatically tags and sorts all of it. So instead of a project manager spending 4 hours digging through a nested folder from 6 months ago to find a specific plumbing spec, the system surfaces it instantly.
And the platform goes much deeper with document intelligence. The AI actually extracts the vital details from complex project specifications and drawings.
Which is critical for landmarked buildings.
Incredibly critical. Compliance on a landmark building is strict. If a subcontractor uses a material that deviates even slightly from the historic spec, that requires really expensive rework.
Like using the wrong shade of brick or the wrong mortar joint.
Exactly. The system automatically cross-checks the active project information against those historic specs to catch compliance gaps before the material is even ordered.
That saves so much money. And it tackles the day-to-day communication bottleneck, too. Like, let's talk about RFIs, the requests for information.
Oh, the bane of every contractor's existence.
Right. Usually this is a sub officially asking the architect or GC for clarification on a drawing. On a normal job, answering an RFI takes a few days.
Sure.
Multiply that by 1,600 apartments, and you have a paper bottleneck that stops a $500 million job dead. But the platform has an RFI assistance feature that acts like an AI project assistant.
How does that work?
It instantly generates draft RFI responses using the historical data and context of the active job, which cuts the turnaround time to almost nothing.
That's incredible. And it also shifts the management style from reactive to proactive. They utilize schedule risk detection and budget variance insights.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
So the software actively evaluates the master schedule to catch algorithmic bottlenecks early, and it tracks budget variance trends. So leadership can see exactly where the money is bleeding on, say, Building 12 before it infects Building 13.
Oh, wow. Plus, I saw it uses API integrations to connect directly into a company's existing ERP.
Right, their enterprise resource planning software.
Yeah. Basically the financial central nervous system of a company. So there is no manual data entry between the field and the accounting department.
Not at all.
When you completely remove that administrative friction, you allow your teams to actually focus on the build. And they are going to need to, because Williamsburg isn't a one-off masterpiece.
Not at all.
It is the proof of concept for a massive active pipeline.
The velocity of the capital deployment right now is just staggering. The government is essentially outsourcing its deferred maintenance backlog to the private sector all at once.
Let's look at the active deals.
Yeah, let's look at the active PACT deals currently in motion. Up in the Bronx, you have Eastchester Gardens. That is a $391 million deal covering 1,850 residents, being handled by a team of MDG, Wavecrest, and Infinite Horizons.
Okay, so that's Bronx. And over in Manhattan, you've got the Hernandez, Meltzer, and Seward Park deal sitting at $318 million.
Then back in the Bronx, there's the Metro North Plaza and Gaylord White deal. That's $272.6 million, partnered with the community builders and Ascendant.
And we can't forget the massive trust deals, right? Nostrand Houses in Brooklyn and the Bronx River Edition are part of a sweeping $493 million package.
It's massive.
The horizon on this is huge. Over 28,000 apartments have already been converted to this model, and there are more than 12,000 currently in the planning phase.
So let's break down the financial mechanics of that pipeline for the subcontractors listening, because the barrier to entry here is pretty unique.
Yeah, let me do the math on this, because this is where the opportunity gets very real for smaller firms. Every single one of these NYCHA PACT deals has a strict 25% subcontracting requirement for MWBEs.
Minority and women-owned business enterprises.
Exactly, 25%. So on that Eastchester Gardens project, the $391 million one, that is $97 million legally carved out. On the Hernandez deal, $79 million. On Metro North, $68 million, just carved out.
And this highlights a critical friction point in the industry right now. How do smaller certified businesses scale up fast enough to absorb that much capital?
Because it's a huge jump.
It is. The biggest barrier for an MWBE isn't skill, and it isn't drive. It is almost always operational capacity.
Right.
I mean, if you are a specialized plumbing sub, and your biggest job to date was $1 million, can you instantly staff up, buy the fleet of trucks, and manage the logistics of a $10 million PCT subcontract?
You can't just stretch your existing crew 10 times over and hope for the best. That's how businesses fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you are certified, but you lack that massive capacity right now, this is where specialized financial tools become your absolute lifeline.
Like what?
SBA microloans and the 80 Business Development Mentorship Program. They are specifically designed to bridge that exact gap.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, they help smaller firms build out the operational infrastructure, hire the middle management, and acquire the assets required to actually execute on these massive legal carve-outs without collapsing under the weight of the new work.
Okay, so we've established this towering pile of capital, and we know the pipeline is flowing fast. Now let's talk about the subcontractor's playbook. How do you actually get a piece of this work?
Well, first, you have to understand the required trades. Because these are total overhauls, the projects need basically everything. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC, elevator modernization, facade restoration,
Lead abatement, mold remediation.
roofing, painting, flooring, you name it.
The real volume play here, though, seems to be in the interior apartment renovations. I mean, think about it, 1,600 apartments in Williamsburg alone. That translates to hundreds of individual subcontracts.
Oh, easily.
And the beauty of this scale is that these are multi-year projects. You aren't bidding on a chaotic 2-month job. You are bidding on 2 to 3 years of steady, locked-in work on a single site.
Yeah, and to capture that, there are specific action items you must take. First, you need to get pre-qualified through NYCHA's PACT RFQ.
The request for qualifications.
Right. Second, you have to actively build relationships with the winning developer teams we've been mentioning.
So MDG, Wavecrest, Community Builders, Infinite Horizons.
Exactly. They are the ones holding the purse strings on the execution side, not the city.
But, okay, let me push back on the reality of a multi-year job for a second.
Go for it.
Steady work for 3 years sounds fantastic on a spreadsheet. But how on earth do you float payroll and materials for a multi-million-dollar job when commercial payment terms often mean you are waiting 60 to 90 days for a massive invoice to actually clear?
And that is the harsh reality of the construction business.
Yeah,
Working capital is the silent killer.
it really is.
You can have a backlog worth $5 million, be highly profitable on paper, and still go bankrupt if you can't make payroll for your 50 guys on a Friday.
A completely profitable company running out of cash just because they grew too fast.
It happens every day.
Right.
But that is exactly what SBA Community Advantage loans are designed to solve.
Really?
Yeah, they provide the necessary working capital specifically to flow your payroll, to buy your heavy materials up front, and to keep your daily operations moving smoothly while you wait for that lengthy payment cycle to catch up.
So you don't stall out.
Exactly. You absolutely cannot let cash flow constraints keep you on the sidelines of a $7 billion pipeline. The financial tools exist specifically to support the operational demands.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means the PACT program represents a generational shift in how city infrastructure is maintained. But to capture the opportunity, you need a dual approach.
You do.
You have to leverage financial tools like the SBA equipment and working capital loans we discussed to ensure you have the physical capacity to do the work.
Right.
And simultaneously, you have to leverage operational tools like the AI workflows and automated compliance checking from Smart Business Automator, so your back office doesn't completely collapse under the administrative weight of the scale.
Because scaling successfully requires both the capital to build and the digital systems to manage.
Yeah.
One without the other is just a recipe for failure.
So here is your specific call to action today. If you want to get involved in these projects, your absolute first step is to register on NYCHA's iSupplier portal.
Very important.
You can find that at nyc.gov/business. Once you are in that system, get yourself on the PACT RFQ pre-qualified list.
Do it today.
Yeah, do it right now because the next round of developer selections is already coming down the pike. Position yourself today so you are ready before the bid even hits the street.
It is entirely about positioning and readiness.
And look, if you know a contractor who is dealing with the massive growing pains of scaling up for large-scale renovations, or someone who is trying to crack into these lucrative public-private partnerships but doesn't quite understand the playbook, send them this deep dive right now.
Just text on the link.
Yeah. And hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss our next breakdown. We are tracking every major deal and trend you need to know about to grow your business.
And check out smartbusinessautomator.com too.
Right. Be sure to check them out to get your administrative friction out of the way so you can actually focus on the build.
I will leave you with a final thought to mull over, looking at the macro picture. We are watching a fundamental transformation of urban infrastructure and who controls it. Think about this. If 1/3 of all public housing in the country's largest city is essentially being rebuilt and then permanently managed by private joint ventures over the next decade,
Yeah.
how will that permanently shift the balance of power in the local construction industry? As these massive private partnerships take the reins from traditional government agencies, who truly becomes the new gatekeeper of the American city?
Wow. It really makes you wonder who will be holding the keys 10 years from now. We started off talking about what it takes to physically flip a small city. It turns out you need $492 million, the right historic tax credits, and an AI assistant just to read your plumbing specs. But most importantly, you have to know the playbook. Thanks for taking the plunge with us today. We will catch you on the next deep dive.